The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, we closed out the week on Friday with a market trade in the grains and oilseeds that was relatively mixed. We did get a little more support in the soy complex, particularly soybean oil, amid the EPA's announcement on small refinery exemptions. That came out late morning Friday. Also getting more results from the Midwest crop tour and some final yield estimates there. And we had another strong day to the upside in cattle futures ahead of the cattle on feed report. Let's talk through things. Joining us for a conversation, it's good to have him back with us, Dwayne Bussey with Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, how are you, buddy? Welcome back to Market Talk.
I'm good. How are you, Jesse?
I can't complain. I know it's getting to be football season. I believe you got coaching duties starting up here, and so luckily we can get you on a home game day to talk to markets, Dwayne.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, when you asked earlier in the week, I think you knew my schedule was going to get kind of crazy, but luckily we're now into the season where kids are at school and practice is at a normal afternoon time. It works much better for the broker than those morning practices. But yeah, I don't know. We got the defending champs coming to town tonight, so it definitely will be a good one. But the boys seem ready, so I'm maybe a little excited. Probably more excited than a assistant coach should be. But it's fun. It's football. It's fall. So how are you not excited?
Yep, and college football and the pros starting up too here. Regular season around the corner. It's my favorite time of the year. I know that for sure. Mm-hmm. And you know, hey, having a regular schedule probably helped you out some on Friday with all the different news coming out for the markets. And I think one we should start with, it was the talk of social media all week, and folks were saying, you know, the markets were trading the news, and that was the Midwest crop tour. We saw some interesting results come from that on the state level Thursday with Iowa, Minnesota yields. Iowa corn much lower than I think some folks anticipated. Minnesota much higher. But then here on Friday, we got the final estimates out from them from Pro Farmer. 182.7 for a national average corn yield, 53 bushels per acre for soybean national average yield. You look at those numbers out just at the close. What are your thoughts, Dwayne?
Pretty friendly for soybeans, especially with the week that they put in, and interesting. You know, I enjoy this week. It's fun watching, you know, the scouts out there and doing the yield counts. But I mean, the pod counts in general were pretty high. But I think, you know, what Pro Farmer has to do here at the end is bring it all together and like, okay, we follow the same route every year, and that's crazy important. But like Minnesota is a great example. We got clients in southern Minnesota that can't wait for harvest. They got this monster crop. And we got clients in central Minnesota that are just like, man, can it just hail and just be done? So you got to balance that. You know, Minnesota is not going to yield as high as Pro Farmer Tour found out. So very interesting numbers. Like I said, let's start with the beans at 53. I mean, to me, you put that into a spreadsheet, you're talking an ending stock then below 200 million bushels, which won't happen. So, you know, I guess now maybe the fact that China's not buying, maybe that's not a big deal. I think they eventually will buy from us. It's just they got a big South America crop they can buy from now. But soybeans, but losing those acres, and now maybe the yield's not that high, which, like I said, it's interesting because the pod count showed it being huge. But I think the experts at Pro Farmer kind of know there's a lot of disease pressure. It's dry in the eastern corn belt. They don't want to get burned like it kind of happened last year where the yield fell into the end of the year. So interesting numbers, and, you know, you got to throw them out there, right? So I'm just proud of them for throwing them out there.
I want to get to the corn in a second, but since we're on the topic of soybeans, I think we should weave in the EPA SRE decision that came out on Friday. You know, the market really traded the rumor on Thursday, gave us some really good strength, bean oil and soybeans, but yet we didn't really trade the news on Friday once we got it mid-session, Dwayne.
Yeah, you're right. And that's so often this market trades the headlines and the news. And I think that goes back to the algos, doesn't it? You know, they trade those headlines, move the market quickly. And then somebody like me, a human, has to wait and figure out what the news was and move the market. But yeah, I mean, good news there, not phenomenally bullish news. But when it came out today, actually, soybean oil went lower quickly and then came back into the close a little bit. So I think the market was a little bit confused by the actual data. And I was too, maybe a little bit, because they weren't all exempt. They weren't all forgiven. So it was just kind of this middle of the road. But I am glad to see EPA actually finally step up and say, no, you can't all get exempt all the time. You did not have financial hardship because of the biofuel blends, right?
And I think maybe this was EPA trying to do a balancing act and give a little something to everyone. But now that we have some certainty there, I think it just continues to add piece by piece some more certainty on RFS, RVOs. Another topic is the 45Z stuff, all of that. We're kind of slowly putting the puzzle pieces together on what some of this could look like moving forward for the U.S. producer, I think, Dwayne.
I still think it's going to be really bullish moving forward. It's frustrating how long it takes, right? I mean, we all want the answers just out there, because it seems like every other week I read from, some different country, Brazil, a lot of times, like, they moved their blend rate up to, 45%. And it's like, oh, here we are sitting at 15, trying to get that. So it's frustrating. I'm ready for it to go. I still think, you follow the money. There was a lot of money spent building crush plants lately. And I think if we can get that aviation fuel through sometime, I think then we really have something. And we better crush them here, because, boy, China's sure not buying our soybeans right now, are they?
No, they are not. I know that's a point of contention for a lot of growers. We've seen the American Soybean Association sending a letter here this week to the administration. And, I think about some of what I've heard from the Dakotas, for instance, when it comes to soybean basis, and some of the rumors that are out there on whether or not beans might even get accepted in some places. I know for some folks in your area and to the west of you, this is a big concern right now, because a lot of those beans, as I understand it, they go on the rail to the PNW to China, Dwayne.
Right. That's what happens in North Dakota and northern half of South Dakota. Well, the tri-state area, you could say. You're right. A lot of our beans get harvested, get right on a train, shipped out to PNW, because that's the cheapest source for China to buy. Well, everyone knows they haven't bought any yet, right? So yeah, guess what happened to our soybean basis up here? My nearest elevator is $1.40 under the board right now. And that happened in a heck of a hurry. It was 80, 85, and that's not a great basis either. So none of us really locking it in, and now all of a sudden it's $1.40. The easy thing now, it's an easy decision for me to say don't do anything, because I sure don't like that basis. We might have to store some beans here. Now, we've got a lot more crush plants than we used to. So, I mean, the basis will come around quickly, but crush plants don't need everything at harvest. So the basis doesn't improve at harvest here. We still need that P&W bid. And if you go all the way back to this spring, we had tornadoes go through along I-94 that runs from Fargo west up to Bismarck. That took out a lot of commercial storage. And we were worried this spring that something like this would happen, that they just can't get built back fast enough. And what kind of crop science do we have? And where's everything going to go? And, it was so hard to calculate that out. But now it's all kind of coming to a head here of like, yeah, there just might not be enough space. I don't know about the no bid for beans yet. I've heard that rumor too. That's depressing, isn't it? For sure. I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, to me, an elevator would take them for a certain amount and just pile them if nothing else. But we'll figure something out up here.
And I hate to say it, but I want to reiterate, it is a rumor. I have not confirmed it yet, but it is a rumor that is out there, and I've heard the rumor multiple times. So we'll have to see what happens there. I do want to come back to the corn market, and that number estimate, that pro farmer number, 182.7. Yeah, I think traditionally they're usually a good amount lower than USDA. I could be mistaken there. I don't know the numbers, totally. But to me, that seems, you're talking 6 bushels off USDA's estimate. It's a fairly big swing, I would think, Dwayne.
No, that is a fairly big swing. But I think the problem is it's still above 180, right? We're still... It would still be a record yield, but I think like everyone else watching the tour this week, I didn't see the baseball bat type ears that I thought I was going to see in the tour in the pictures. Now, there were still some nice sized ears, but then the ear counts weren't there. And I wondered about that all along. Was the stand there? I know in South Dakota where they found a high yield too, but that's the southeast part of the state, which is in the best shape of anyone right now. We had stand issues early on. We froze off early. We had hot, dry wind, some trash covered up some of the corn plants. So if you don't have the stand, you just don't have the table set for the record yields. And I kind of think that's where part of it comes from. Now with corn, you can take the yield back some. You could maybe still, I mean, feed and residual use is a big question. Remember, they really increased that last month. And I wonder if that wasn't to help out a little bit to soften the blow. So maybe they decrease demand moving forward if the yield does come down from USDA. We got to remember, this is pro farmer, not USDA. But this is a friendly report, a good way to close the week for a producer/broker.
We're talking with Dwayne Bussey from Bolt Marketing here today on the show. I wonder here too, for the corn market, Deeks corn 411 at the close Friday, and looking ahead, technically, I mean, could we be maybe building us a little bit of a base here into harvest as we've gotten back above this $4 mark on the board anyway, Dwayne?
I sure think so, Jesse. I'd love to say that this market's going to just make a beautiful trend up. I don't know if that's possible because I don't think we have the combined bullish news to do that. But what it does feel like over the last 2 weeks with the bearish USDA report, now the crop tour being done, it feels like we made a low. Funds stopped selling. And really, that's the first thing we needed. And probably feels like the first time they stopped selling all year long, right? They've been just hammering this market. And it's been frustrating because as tight as our old crop stocks are supposedly, USDA is telling us they are, we should have had a bigger rally at some point in time this spring. So producers are very undersold and really need a rally. And I think it's fairly easy for me to say, like, I know you're not at the percent sold you want to be, but I think you just got to do nothing here and keep holding. I really see kind of a choppy, slight grind higher here for a while. But I think by January, we really like the corn price. And a lot of that has to do with being a futures market and trading what I think is going to be sharply lower corn acres next year. I think corn will have to buy some acres next year. And especially you start dipping this yield down even more, it can't lose more than 7 million acres like it might at this pace.
Let's talk about the wheat market real quick. Kind of a down day to end the week Friday. I believe we got September 1st notice days here this upcoming week. Any thoughts for you across the wheat trade, Dwayne?
It's gotta be at a low, isn't it? I mean, this poor market, we just talked about how corn looks good, 23% retracement. Soybeans are really the highest it's been since June. And then you transition to wheat and I'm just like, oh, Jesus. Yeah, let's make that a quick talk. The problem is that there's a lot of wheat in the world. I get that. But French wheat now, has got the lowest crop rating it's had in 3 years. That's something. I mean, Europe, you got to watch European weather. Spring wheat up here, we've had so much rain, it's actually really hard for the guys to get it off. But there's some really high yields, there's some really quality issues. Man, I would think spring wheat would find a bottom here and start to make a harvest low and grind higher. But boy, there just doesn't seem to be the buying interest. I could talk about the trade action in corn and soybeans this week and how much I loved it. And I'm sure we'll talk cattle too. The trade action just seems bullish. When it goes to wheat, it just seems like either no one's playing or no one cares to go long that market. But gosh, I would think there's got to be a low in here.
We sure would hope so. Well, you mentioned cattle, and we'll segue off of wheat and go to something more positive. Wheat's a dog, cattle's a rocket. I mean, here was another huge updated futures on Friday. We are testing and at 360 at August feeders. We're talking ahead of the cattle on feed numbers. Right. So, I mean, we'll digest those this upcoming week. But, man, oh, man, I've run out of things to say about the cattle market. I'm just impressed at this point.
I kind of have, too. I mean, it's more of the same. It's a bullish story. The cattle on feed report, yes, we're right before that. So, I mean, the estimates are 91% placements. But I'm hearing a lot of people talk about somewhere in the 80s, maybe as low as 81%. And that seems too low to me. But it just goes back. There's just no supply. The calves aren't out there. The Mexican border is still closed. Excuse me, will continue to stay closed. The tariffs on Brazil beef and Australian beef coming in, even though those tariffs are in place, it's still coming in though. And actually at a pretty good clip, but that'll just tell you how high priced we are. I read today that our cattle prices are twice as high as Australia. Now, it's not easy to ship meat or live cattle, but man, I would think there's going to be some economical level here where we just start to bring in supply, and maybe it's even in cows, but we haven't rationed demand yet, have we? I mean, grocery stores, yep, it's gotten higher, but with inflation, everything's higher. So this market is just a rocket ship, like you said, and really painful for hedgers. It's funny. We got hedgers that are upset that we don't have enough corn sold, and then hedgers that are upset that we're 100% sold in cattle. And I get it. Margin calls suck. They're not fun, but a guy has to stay hedged on this market, because when this cattle market turns, $360 is not the new norm for feeders, Jesse. That's about the only thing I can guarantee you today.
I wonder, too, if the outside markets maybe added into the fun on Friday in the proteins, with Fed Chair Powell talking in Jackson Hole and seeming open to the idea of a rate cut in September. And I know that shot the Dow higher, for instance, and the dollar lower. I just wonder if some of that played a role as well on Friday's trade, Dwayne.
Oh, it sure didn't hurt it, Jesse. You're right. Dollar down 1,000 points. And I should have brought that up sooner. That really helps our exports too. So, now as our soybeans and corn prices go up, you think, well, we're not going to be as competitive out there in the global market. Well, yes, we are, if the dollar drops 1,000 points. So yeah, I think that had something to do with the cattle market as well. It just, stock market flying higher. People feel like they have more money, and yeah, and hopefully they do keep buying steaks. It'll be interesting to see after Labor Day. Will demand start to decrease like it seasonally tends to do, or it doesn't matter? Like, is there just not enough cattle out there? Cash cattle trade so far this week has been up a couple of bucks. I assume you get the cattle and feed report out of the way, and then more trade happens, I assume. But packers are trying to kill the least amount of cattle they can, because obviously they're operating in the red.
No, it's a great thought. Anything else, anything final you would mention or reiterate to folks here today on the show, Dwayne?
I won't lie, it's been a frustrating year market-wise. We just didn't have the seasonal spikes in May and July and June we usually do for grains. But you always got to look moving forward, I guess I'd say. And like I said, it's easy for me to say I wouldn't sell any corn or really soybeans here. If you want to start to scale up, sell soybeans from this level, if you don't have a $1.40 basis, I don't mind you doing that, because these are better prices. But like I said, also now these USDA numbers don't look that bad. These yields don't look that horrible to me anymore. I think we put in our harvest low in August once again, and I think we can grind higher, but be patient. It's not going to be as fast as you want, but by January, I think we can be pretty happy with some prices.
It's all about risk management. And if folks want to reach out and have a conversation with you about their risk management plan, I know they can reach you there at Bolt Marketing. How can they get in touch, Dwayne?
Yeah, the easiest way is 605-448-2365, or they can check us out online at boltmarketingllc.com.
Dwayne Bussey with Bolt Marketing. Always good to hear from you, sir. Thanks for joining us on Market Talk. Have a great one. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.